The first rule of Punch Club is you don't ever normally release Punch Club. Tiny Build Games is holding a Twitch event, which basically has users trying to complete the game through chat. Once the game is completed in there, the game will release. This has caused a little bit of a controversy, mostly because the game was able to be pre-ordered, with such figures as Total Biscuit chiming in on the madness. But the question is it worth your time at $9.99? That's what I'm here to answer, but before I begin, want to make sure you guys know that this key was obtained from the publisher for the purposes of review. That won't change my opinion in the end, but you should know that because of FTC guidelines, as well as the whole morals thing, you know? Now the game starts with a basic story premise. Your father was sort of a famous fighter-boxer who was mysteriously killed by an unknown assailant. So of course, you being the son, you're out for, you guessed it, revenge. So the goal of the game is simple: get strong enough and find this mysterious person in order to beat the crap out of them. Now, as I mentioned, this is a simulator game, and I'm going to go into some of the mechanics that the game has and my overall thoughts on it. Now, the game doesn't let you just train without thinking of anything else. For example, you'll have to work a job to earn money to earn food. That will give you the energy in order for you to do the training that you need to do in order to get better as a fighter. Now, there are 4 major stats that you have to keep track of in terms of the simulation portion: the health, the food, the mood, and your energy. Now, each of them has their own specific purpose in terms of the simulation portion. For example, if you don't have a good mood, that means your training isn't going to be as effective for your fight stats. And so you have to keep these stats balanced in terms of, okay, I have a little bit of food left, I can go do some other things, but I can't necessarily pop every single point of my effort into food, because you will need all the other stats in question. Now, this game's strength, in my opinion, is the difficulty of this simulation. For example, you'll notice here that I actually lost points in my fight stats, the 3 stats being strength, agility, and stamina. See, other simulation games, once you get the point, it doesn't matter at that point, but that's not the case in Punch Club. You have to earn those stats in terms of agility, stamina, and strength, and while there are skills that sort of raise the lower limit at that point, so for example, my agility and stamina can't go below 4 because I earned some skill points during a fight, and we're able to select a skill that makes it so it can't go below it. But on the other hand, my strength doesn't have that yet, and so I have to keep on training my strength over and over again to get it higher up for those fights. The thing is that you can have moments in this game where you make absolutely no progress because of the combination of things that you're doing, whether it be you're working too much, whether it means that you're sleeping too much, or whether you're not working out in the right conditions. And one strategy is not always going to make the difference. The thing is that there are unique events that can happen in the game in order to sort of force you into a different situation and can push you back in terms of your progress. If you get injured, for example, you are that less likely to make a big stat boost in terms of your training, and so you will have to wait to sort of heal up at that point. Maybe it's a good time to go and work a little bit more because, hey, you can't really train that effectively. On the flip side, you can earn a lot of money and try to make some of the bigger purchases in the game, but you can always get robbed at certain points. Even though that it was a little bit distressing to me because it always happened when I seemed to get enough money to make a big purchase, it does sort of add that element to the game, risk and reward, which the game does rather nicely. Now, you just saw me purchase a little bit of food for later on, but I'm going to go to the gym at this point to actually train up. Now, there are a couple of places that you can train. You can train in your home, but in the early goings, you may not have the money to earn the equipment at home you needed that is as effective as the gym. So maybe you'll just go to the gym and pay $10 every time you go in. Now, again, you can only do certain amount of exercises here before your food and energy goes out, and you'll either have to buy something at the vending machine or you'll have to leave. It's a good balance, and there's a lot of good decisions made by the game designers here because, again, you can't just, rush one stat. You can't just rush, a certain ability over and over again. You really have to diversify. And even though you have to maybe specialize in a certain fight stat at certain points, I do feel that the game's balance does really well in the long haul. Now, you see here there are upcoming fights, the Rookie League and the Ultimate fights. There are branching paths in this game in terms of what you choose to do with your fighter, as you see with the story branches here. While the story paths are basic, I was actually surprised to see a simulator game go down this path, and I do appreciate it. There are reasons to try every character and sort of talk to them and see what they have to offer. Certain paths will lead to specific bonuses, which will help your guy train even harder. Now, the UI and the aesthetic blends well into the simulation gameplay. As you see the little stats boosts in terms of those bubbles, they work in terms of seeing a visual representation of what you're growing with. As sort of time goes on and you're sort of slowing down, you'll see those time bubbles within that aesthetic, you know, sort of tick down, like, okay, you only have this much left to gain at this point. Or even when your mood is bad, it will specifically tell you, hey, guess what, your mood is bad. I'm going to put a little, you know, frowny face and your stat to show that. On the flip side, I wish there were keyboard shortcuts at this point, because it just makes the game easier, especially for a simulator game. I feel like there was no reason not to put them in, and while yes, it's all mouse controlled, it's one of those things that I expect at this point more than anything else. Now, secondary characters in the game will provide specific boosts if you sort of fulfill their requirements. For example, Roy, I need to help him with his engine, and I need to just sort of chill with him, get to know him, and he'll become a training partner, making my training that much more effective at that point. I may have to earn it over time again, like with Adrian, as you see on the sort of porch there. Yes, of course, her name is Adrian. She's a love interest, and if I'm in love at that point, I will get stat boost in my training, because that's how love works, people. But on that note, you never really know exactly how much you need to do for a certain person. There aren't percentages or bars that tell you you need to gain this much stat or you need to do this engine for this amount of time. And while the game doesn't necessarily have a time limit in terms of the, okay, you have to do it by X amount of days, despite that day calendar right there, it is annoying because especially with certain events, you don't know what you need going into them and you can get your ass kicked. Like, for example, this event where I ask about a special pizza and I have to deliver a pizza to a certain enemy that I will fight. Now, I actually do well in this fight, surprisingly, but when I first did it, I got my ass handed to me, which will take us to the simulation part of the fighting aspect of this game. Now, as I mentioned, there are three major stats in the game: strength, agility, and stamina. And of course, we're going to be fighting a ninja alligator as opposed to a ninja turtle because, you know, copyright and all that. Now, in terms of the fight itself, I can't actually fight. All I do is set the skills and the sort of fighting style that I want, and then they just go at it at that point. Now, the choices that I make in terms of the skill may be based off of my opponent or specifically my stats. For example, you'll notice here that I'm a little bit higher in the stamina and agility, and I'm actually more of an agility character. So I'll probably want to use kicks, agility-dependent skills, but I may want to mix them up depending on my opponent. If my opponent doesn't have high stamina, maybe I try to go for that stamina hit over and over again. Maybe I, just go for a straight out, assault of their health at that point before they can get going. There's a lot of strategy, and it's not necessarily rock, paper, scissors, because it can change depending on where you are in the fight. Now, when looking at it in a sort of a retrospect, even though I sort of did want to control the fight, I understand the decision not to have you actually do the fighting. This puts more emphasis on the training. This puts more emphasis on your planning more than anything else, and it also gives that sort of random nature to the fights. The fact of the matter is, if you train your guy right, he should win in most cases. He will lose once in a while just by sheer luck, whether it be, certain hits just hitting over and over again, but you do get better in terms of choosing your moves over time. Again, if you're facing somebody who has a high agility, maybe you go for accuracy. Maybe you understand that, okay, they don't have a lot of strength and stamina, but they have a high agility. I want to focus on actually hitting them in terms of actually getting those hits that, connect, because yeah, they're going to be able to dodge a lot of them, but the ones that I am able to hit, I may be able to do significant damage with them. You can also see the balance here too. Going into every fight that comes across your plate isn't a good idea because, again, your health in the simulation part of the game does affect your health here. So you may go into a fight, sort of hamstrung. And again, if you lose the fight and you had low health to begin with, you may get injured, which again causes a bit of training problems, and thus you're not able to gain stats as fast. Now, you saw there, I knocked him down, did a significant amount of damage, and I can get combos going, which will sort of cause a combo multiplier damage of sorts. I haven't really figured out exactly what the formula is for that, but there is a significant reason to go for combos because they can do significant damage, as you saw there. Now, I do wish that the sound effects or, some of the in-game fights would be a little bit more I guess, aesthetically pleasing. This does seem simple at times, and especially because you'll see this over and over again, but it's almost like you can let it run in the background and let it sort of a turn sort of finish before you go forward. Now, I beat the ninja, I forget what his name is, Ninja Bob or whatever his name is, and I earned some skill points, some happiness because I beat up somebody, and I lost a little bit of health because I did get hurt in the fight a little bit. So you can see your stats here and how effective your fighting stance was, so you can make better choices for the next time around. Now, those skill points I just earned will allow me to buy certain moves and certain abilities that will help me in terms of my progress and in sort of later fights. As you see here, for example, if I bought muscle memory, I wouldn't lose strength under 4. I've done that for the other two for Do Not Fall Down and Meat Runner. But I also may get new abilities such as Backhand Punch or Red Sneakers. Each of them have their own strengths and they can really specialize how you're going to fight. Do I want to be a stamina sort of agility guy? Do I want to go all strength? For example, you'll see here Karate Kick. The Way of the Tiger is the agility path, and so do I go entirely in agility and see if I can get penetrating strikes and be able to counterattack and do more damage and be able to react to people rather easily? While other simulation games only really sort of mess around with the base stats, this game did add that layer of complexity to add like, okay, strength dependent damage for that boxing punch, or a strike modifier. If all strikes dealt, it reduces the opponent's strike's effectiveness. There was reasons to go down each path from what I saw, and you could really specialize for a good reason. It wasn't necessarily just, oh, you're a strong guy. No, you're a strong guy who's focusing on dealing stamina damage so that they get weak so they can't get back into the fight and you control the pace. I love the game for this, and I did have an addictive quality and gives you reasons to go for multiple playthroughs as well. Overall, in the simulation genre, I think Punch Club really does the job at the pricing question. Even with this sort of weird marketing that they've had, I really enjoyed what I had to play here. There was an addictive quality to it, and again, the number of choices and the difficulty really pushed it ahead of a lot of other simulation games in the genre. Yes, the game does have a lot of, little things that sort of bug me here and there. Again, I feel like it could do better visually. I feel like it could better implement the keyboard, for example, for those who would prefer to use that. But if you're looking for a simulation experience, and in particular one you can get into depth with, I think Punch Club is right up your alley, even if you just don't necessarily like the topic of boxing and fighting. There's enough strategy here from this fighting element that it does give you reasons to just keep on coming back to it. Alright, this is Dragnix signing out. I hope you have an idea of what Punch Club has to offer. I will leave my Steam review in the description as soon as the game is released, but I will probably publish the video before then. Because of the Twitch event and because it's unsure when the game is actually going to release, I think it's at 90% at this point, but regardless, I don't know when it's going to release, and because of that, the way that Steam reviews work, you can't actually write a Steam review for a game that hasn't released yet, even if you've played it like myself. But I will leave it in the description below. Again, like this video if you did find the content helpful, and leave a comment for anything you would like to see changed, or anything that will help me become a better creator in terms of reviews and the content that you want to see. If you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you all next week. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button in the middle of the screen. The last video I did will be in the top left, and a related video to this will be in the top right. I do have a Twitter handle at the bottom left, and a Facebook page at the bottom right. And of course, you can always subscribe to the Google Plus portion. Anyway, thanks for watching, and keep on gaming.